Hello! Welcome back to our videos on basics for using Blackboard Ultra. In this video, we'll be talking about rubrics, grading, and some elements of feedback. Now, when it comes to grading, especially when it comes to rubrics, every instructor is going to be a little different. I do want to plug that our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning library does have an excellent text called Introduction to Rubrics that breaks down lots of different types and the different ways in which they can be utilized. So if you are thinking, well, I'd like to incorporate a rubric, but I really don't know where to start, that text is a great place to start. And you are more than welcome to stop by my office in 317 to ask me about checking the book out. I would be happy to lend it to you. It's fantastic. I have a copy at home. Now, if you are looking to grade and create rubrics in Blackboard Ultra, it actually is pretty simple once you get familiar with a couple different steps. So this video will be about how to do it in Ultra, and the accompanying portion of this lesson will have a quick write-up of some things to keep in mind in terms of best practices. So let's talk rubrics first. The first thing we're going to need to do is to locate one of our assignments. So I'm going to go ahead and use in our new Faculty Academy shell the assessment report, which is something that you'll be submitting later. You're going to click on this submission portal, and that is going to bring you to this section here. So once you've created the assignment, you will have this opportunity to do a couple different things. The first of which is to create a due date. As of right now, when I am recording this, just for context, it is March 12th of 2026. The new Faculty Academy hasn't even launched yet. It won't launch until August. So that's why you don't see a due date here. It is super easy to add one though. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit due date, and then I just tap this little icon that looks like a calendar. And let's say that hypothetically I want this to be due on June 5th, which is actually the course and program assessment deadline for this spring semester. I would hit that due date, and then over here in your time section, you're going to see it default to 11:59 p.m., so almost midnight. Something to keep in mind, you don't want to set it to midnight exactly, because that's going to be the very beginning of Friday, June 5th, and we don't want that. We want it to be that very last minute of the day, because we do have a lot of students who are working full-time, or maybe they are high school students who work part-time and are also in marching band or play sports, and they need the weekend to do that assignment, which is fine. If you have something due Sunday at midnight, you'll want to set it to Sunday at 11:59. I've clarified my language in my assignments just to say 11:59 p.m., but some people still say midnight. Just make sure it's set to 11:59. Now, each instructor does things a little differently. If you want to change the time, you can. It's super easy. You're going to hit that clock button. You can toggle between the different hours and minutes, and whether or not we're working with morning or afternoon or evening, entirely up to you. Let's say that I do want this to be due at like 5 p.m. I can set it to that. Or, hypothetically, let's say that you're working with some extra credit and it's not required. Maybe there is no due date. You can click that no due date button, which was where we were a second ago. So if I wanted to retcon all of this, I could. I could hit it cancel and do that as well. Now, there are a couple other things to keep in mind as you get ready for grading. The first of which is this second box that reads prohibit late submissions. So the text reads, in progress attempts will be submitted automatically at the due date and time. So if we are looking to prohibit late submissions, that means that at 5 o'clock on June 5th, that Friday, nothing else will be accepted after that. Let's say that somebody is halfway through taking a test and you select this button. Whatever they have completed at 5 p.m., that's coming through. Everything else it's kaput. It's not going to happen. You can also prohibit new attempts after the due date. I prefer this option. So in this case, learners can't start new attempts once the due date and time has passed. Now, a little background for me, what I do, I typically give my students a 2 or 3 day grace period after the deadline, but once that has happened, I go in and I select this button. That way, nobody's going back in and submitting assignments that were due 10 weeks ago. Now, are there extenuating circumstances? Will I speak with a student via email or in person about this and try to help them? Yeah, absolutely, but I don't want something slipping through behind me and me not knowing and me not grading it, right? Because if I don't see it, if I don't know they're submitting something from 10 weeks ago, how am I going to know to go back and check it? The good news is in Blackboard, you do tend to get a comprehensive list of everything that needs grading, but just for me, for housekeeping purposes, I really like this option. And again, to be clear, you can always have conversations with those students later, accept their submissions via email. There are options, but this button kind of helps with the housekeeping options. And then you can also allow conversations. So allowing conversations gives students an opportunity to talk about the assignments within the submission portal. You can do that. You don't have to. It's just an option. All right. Now, a couple other things that are available in this section. So is this a formative assessment? This is not automatically excluded from any results calculations. Remember that the difference between a formative assessment and a summative assessment is that a formative assessment, they are actively forming that knowledge, as opposed to a summative assessment. A formative assessment might be a rough draft, whereas a summative assessment is the final draft. So if you want to note in your tools section that yes, this is a formative assessment, it's a rough draft, you are more than welcome to do so. This is for alignment and assessment purposes. I personally don't do much with this box, but you are welcome to if you would like. All right, and then we get into some of the stuff you've likely seen before if you've used Blackboard Learn. We are currently working with an exercise in particular, but we can change the category if we would like, but we're not going to right now. This portal is currently set to allow 2 attempts. The default is 1. But for something like this, I'm allowing 2 submissions, especially because, again, this is in the new Faculty Academy, and there might be something that you're new to that you screw up on the first time. Not a big deal. This is not a punitive thing. You can't get in trouble for any of it, and I want to make sure you've got that second option. I'll also take a third option. It's fine. But we're manually setting it to 2. Evaluating the last attempt. You can also evaluate all attempts if you want to look at someone who is submitting 3 different things and you want to evaluate each one individually. You can do that. That is okay. But it just kind of depends on how you personally want to handle grading that assignment. And I default to the last attempt. All right, you can do letter grades, points, percentages, or complete and incomplete. I have defaulted to points because there are 0 points associated with this assignment anytime we do assessment measures here on campus that are, faculty turning in reports and things of that nature. I'm not grading faculty. That is not my job. My job is to help. So I have it set to 0. But let's say that you are working with points and you have an assignment due and it's worth like 300 points. You can just go in here and type 300. You can also have your points populated based upon your rubric, but we'll get there in a second. We can make evaluation anonymous if we want to, so you can hide the names of your student submissions, but if they're submitting an essay in APA or MLA Chicago, their name's going to be on it anyway, so I wouldn't bother, but if that is something you want to do, by all means, you can. And then we have evaluation options, so if you want to do a peer review, if you want to delegate evaluations to someone else, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say you are the one evaluating your students. So I wouldn't toggle with any of that. That is a little bit more advanced and for different circumstances than the ones you are likely working with. But if you want to learn more about it, by all means, contact the CETL or contact Marshall's instructional design team and they can help you along. Now, we do have assessment security. You can add an access code for student submissions if you would like. I don't. But again, it's entirely up to you. I don't have any experience with it. I don't know anyone who uses that option either, but I'm not saying it's not valuable. If it's something you want to explore, again, you can contact those same people I mentioned earlier. And we do have that Respondus option as well, so you can have that lockdown browser if students are taking an exam. And then we get into our additional tools. So those are time limits. I personally don't set time limits for my assignments, but I know some folks who do. You can do so here. So I'm going to hit add time limit, and then I can just manually set, okay, I want them to have an hour. So I want them to have 60 minutes, or maybe I want them to have an hour and a half. Or an hour and 15, so 75 minutes. You can tell that I am not a math person. So you can set that here if that is something in which you are interested. You do not have to do it. Keep in mind, too, if you are setting time limits, make sure that you are keeping in mind any of your students' accommodations. Next, we have evaluation rubric. Okay, so this is that other thing I wanted to make sure we were talking about in our context of grading. There's a lot going on here in the assignment portal itself, but the rubric is a big one. Now, when it comes to rubrics in Blackboard, one thing that you probably saw in Learn was that, if you used it, was that you could export and import rubrics. It's a little bit more finicky in Ultra, but it's still very worth using. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Course Assessment Report Rubric, because this portal already has one attached. And you can see that I've got 4 columns. I've got the different sections that are used. These were decided by the assessment committee when we evaluate the reports that come in across the college. And these are just to make sure that faculty are really putting in the right data and looking at the things that they need to be looking at as they review student performance. So again, nothing punitive. We're just here to help out. I really don't put a whole lot of emphasis on their number scores, and instead put a lot more emphasis on feedback, because that's what the assessment committee is here for. But you can see in this rubric, we've got all kinds of stuff going on. You'll also notice, as I hover over different sections, that I can add stuff. So let's say that I don't want to have numbers in my rubric. I want to change this. I can hit that little crayon or pencil, and now I can change the numbers if I want to. Or let's say that I need a new column. I can hover over this purple option, and ta-da! Now I have a new one. So when it comes to working with your rubrics, it's going to be very similar to the rubrics that you, or the setup for the course shell. So as long as you see that purple line, you can add and add and add. Do I recommend having a rubric with like 30 different columns? No, I do not. But you could. You shouldn't, but you could. It would still absolutely be an option. And if you want to add in a column going horizontally as opposed to vertically, again, we just see that purple line down here and we add it. Now I don't want to add anything, so I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel. And I do want to discard those changes. I want to leave that rubric alone. But that is there. It is formally assigned to this assignment. Now, let's say that you've got your rubric. It's not already in Blackboard. What do? Well, let's go ahead and take this from the very, very top. And I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel, or I'm going to go ahead and hit close, rather, because I don't want to make any of those changes that I just made. All right, let's say you've got your rubric, you want to incorporate it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to hit this purple line. Most things you do in Blackboard are going to start with this purple line. We're going to hit create, and we're going to hit exercise. So this brings us to a blank version of what you just saw. You can add in your title, you can add your instructions. I highly recommend copying and pasting what's on your assignment sheet, or at the very least providing an abridged version. I typically include a link to the assignment sheet and the rubric here as well, even though students can access the rubric over on the right-hand side, just because I want them to be absolutely sure that they are doing what they need to do, and to make sure they've got access to the assignment information in as many places as possible. Now, again, we're adding our rubric. What we're going to do is we're going to go to this gearbox over here, which brings us right back to our exercise settings that we saw a moment ago. And we'll see that right now we don't have a rubric. So we're going to hit Add Evaluation Rubric. And that Course Assessment Report rubric, which is right here, the one we saw earlier, I can add it. So if you've already got it in your course shell, all you have to do is hit Add. However, if you have not yet added the rubric that you want to use, let's say it's on a Word document, for example, maybe from a previous institution, you will need to hit Create. And then from here, the world is your oyster. You add in your title. You can change the titles of these individual sections. Right now we have excellent, satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and poor. Let's say you wanted to do what we do in assessment, which is 4, 3, 2, 1. You can do that. Right now it's set to percentages. You can change it to points, or in the case of what we do in assessment, you can change it to absolutely no points. Let's say that we are doing points, and we have a couple different sections and they all total to 100. Once you apply the rubric, the point value section in your exercise settings tab will automatically populate as 100, because that's what the rubric is calculated to, which is nice. That makes things a little bit easier. You don't have to go back through and manually set those numbers, because it will have done so for you. Once you've added everything in, all you have to do is hit save. And once you've hit save, it'll end up in your list down here, and then all you'll do is hit add, and there it will be, and you'll see it here on that right hand side. Students will see it too. In fact, as a proof of concept, let me go ahead and get rid of, all right, we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse this, and I'm going to go into the learner preview up here in the upper right corner. In this way, you can see exactly what students are seeing. It's a great way to figure out whether or not you accidentally left things hidden from learners and to make sure things are working the way they're supposed to. So we can see the new Faculty Academy, as you are likely to see it. There are probably some things that'll be a little different by the time you do get around to it, but I'm hoping everything else stays the same. So we see there's our course assessment submission portal. All right, and we have this assignment is evaluated with a rubric. I'm going to tap on it, and then there are all of my rubric categories, which is great. This makes everything super easy for the student. They can see everything that you are going to be using to evaluate them. So they've got that right there in their submission portal, which is fantastic. Now, one thing you might be wondering is, hey, Morgan, didn't you have a write-up of what was supposed to be going on in this submission portal? And that would be correct. When students are doing this, they see this section right here, so their details, including the assessment date and whether or not a rubric evaluates it. But in order to actually submit something, they have to hit View Instructions, and this is where you'll see the actual instructions. They'll see access to the rubric one more time, and they can go in this section, and for my classes anyway, hit that paperclip and attach their Word doc. Once they do that, it will populate right here. It will also show them a preview. I always advocate for students to make sure they've checked the preview before they hit submit, just because they don't want to submit the wrong document. So that is how that works on the student end. So you can see that rubric really easily. And let's say that you end up creating, 4 or 5 different rubrics. Each time you create an assignment in Blackboard Ultra, in that course shell, you will see all of those rubrics listed. You'll just need to pick the one that you need. So that part is pretty simple. But what about feedback? Where do students get the rubric scores themselves? Which is a good question. In this case, we're going to go to the gradebook section. Now, I can see on my end that we have the course assessment report and the reflection. When you get here, you'll have 4 different elements here, one for each module. So something to submit for each of those modules that you are in the new Faculty Academy. Right now, there's nothing to evaluate. I am going to be an evaluator. I'm not going to be a student in here. But for students, when they submit something, they see in their evaluation status, either nothing to evaluate, that means they haven't submitted anything. They might see submission in progress. Instructors can see that part as well. They might see submitted but not yet evaluated. And then finally, they'll see evaluated. So in that evaluation section, once this is here, let's say that the feedback has been provided, you filled out the rubric when you were grading. Once you've done all of that and you've posted the grade, there'll be a time when it was posted, and when they click on the submission, they'll be able to see all of your feedback. Of course, I can't show you an example of that in this video. That would violate FERPA guidelines if we were getting into student grades, but you'll see all of that here in the gradebook, and so will students. When you are wanting to grade something, you'll go to your overview, and you will have your needs evaluation and needs posting. These are different. When you are evaluating something, let's say that I am looking at 25 different rough drafts in a given course. Those 25 will appear right here. It'll say needs attention, 25 rough drafts. If I evaluate, let's say 12 of those rough drafts in one sitting and then I go teach, I do want to make sure that before I come back for the second round, those 12 are posted. Those 12 will then end up in this box down here, and there will be a little black button that says post. That's what you need to hit to make sure students are able to see the grades. So that's a big difference between Blackboard Learn and Blackboard Ultra, is that you have to manually post the grades, whereas it used to be, yes, it's been graded, I put a 0 in, I hit enter and it's there. You do have to go this extra mile to post what needs to be going to the students, but it's very clear about what hasn't been posted, and you'll always have that list in this section. In your results category, you will see all of your learners over here in the left, and no one's in here right now as a learner, which is why you don't see anything. and you will see all of the different assignments, and they will be calibrated based upon however you've got it set up. So if it's based on letter grade, complete or incomplete, points, you will see that here. If you want a comprehensive list of all of your learners, you can click on this section. This section is also going to tell you when they last accessed Blackboard, which can be very helpful. And then finally, your mastery section. So this is where you can get some like learner data, who's doing what, why, what's great in terms of, you know, the assignments that are being completed, the test scores, on what questions are people doing well, things of that nature. But the big ones that you're going to be using are your overview, which is where you will go to begin the grading process. Your evaluable items, where you can see all of the different assignments that have been assigned in your course, and then your results. So how are the students doing? If you want a comprehensive list of all of their grades, this is where it will be. And if you are somebody who stays on top of Blackboard, all of the assignments are graded consistently and on time, everything's ready to go for, say, midterms, you can pull up this on one monitor or in one tab. I always have 2 monitors in my office. And then on the other monitor or in another tab, have your grade submission section from your MyMCTC portal whenever you're submitting midterms, and just pull the information straight from Blackboard. Blackboard is not the final arbiter of grades. There is a note about that in our syllabus template, so make sure to be clear about that with students. But I would also recommend, as you're getting into grading, try to be as on top of your grading as possible. Try to have things graded within the window that's provided in the syllabus template, which is between 7 to 10 business days, so 2 weeks. Students really need to know exactly how they're doing in a given course, and grading is a great way to do that. You also want to make sure that you are assessing early and often, but assessment is something that you'll learn more about in the assessment module, so I will leave my comments for that. In this video, right, we've hit our rubrics, we've talked grading, we've talked where to find feedback. In the rest of the module, or in this lesson, you will see more about the ins and outs of rubrics and grading and feedback, etc. But the video is going to go ahead and conclude here. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please, by all means, shoot me an email, let me know, reach out to your mentor, reach out to MU's design team. You've got lots of different people who would be happy to help you set this stuff up. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great day.